Hey folks, welcome back to Threes In. Bobo's back with you again. So, having just got off the phone with Mikey, I thought of this other story I wanted to share with you. And it's about my going away party at Randolph in July 1980. I was on my way down to Australia for 2 years. And I was working in Headquarters Air Training Command Flight Safety at the time. Jerry Hodgson was my boss, and Mikey was on the tweet side of the house. And Mikey and I had worked together at Vance. We'd been working together for about 3-4 years at this time. So anyway, we were talking about a going away party, and in the past, we usually had our going away parties at this one restaurant, and it really had become kind of stale. So I wanted to do something kind of different. So I said to Mikey, I wonder if we could get together somewhere and have a pig roast. And Mike said, I imagine we can. Well, as it turns out, one of the ground safety guys worked upstairs, had a ranch out in the hill country, Texas hill country, and he volunteered to let us come out there, about 25 miles away maybe. So we said, great, where do we get a pig? Well, Mikey knew a guy in training that also had a little farm out in the country, and he raised hogs. So he went over and talked to him, and the guy said, yeah, I've got one you can buy from us. So we did. And we set this pig roast up for Friday afternoon, evening. Okay, that's kind of the background of it. Now I'm going to take a minute here. We had a guy in that safety division at the time that was just a jerk. There's just no other way to say it. I'll give you a couple examples. Our office was kind of like an open plan, if you will. All the 38 guys were down one side and 37 guys were down the other side of this building on the first floor. It had been a World War II barracks, and those were open bay barracks. But we had open bay desks. So anyway, Mike and I was sitting down there one day drinking coffee, and we got to talking about an idea we had. And we were just sitting there bantering back and forth across about this idea. And this jerk, a 38 guy, he was sitting there, and we didn't think much about him. He was kind of like New Zealand. We knew where he was at any given time, but we really didn't care. But he gets up and walks out and goes upstairs, and about 15 minutes later, the boss, a guy named Johnny Fender. Now, I love Johnny Fender. If you know him, you had to love the guy. Anyway, Colonel Fender comes down, and he says, hey, guys, he says, why don't you gather around? He says, so-and-so came up with a great idea. And so then Colonel Fender proceeds to tell us what Mike and I were just bantering back and forth. And we look over at this guy, and he's standing there just like this. I wanted to smack him. And I don't know if we ever adopted the idea or not, but just that very thing. And then, on another day, Mikey and I would go over to the gym and work out over lunch. So we were working out this one day, and then we decided, you know what, after we get done with the day, probably wouldn't be a bad idea to have a couple beers. So we went by the Class 6 store, bought a couple 6-packs of beer, and brought them back, threw them in the refrigerator, didn't think any more about it. Well, here it comes about 4:20, 4:25, and Numbnuts gets up and walks upstairs again. And then boss came down, Colonel Fender came down, and Numbnuts walks on back to the refrigerator, comes out, and hands Colonel Fender a beer. And Colonel Fender says, now that's a guy that's going somewhere. He knows how to take care of the boss. He handed him one of our beers. You got to be kidding. Anyway, so, okay, now you got that guy in mind. So we now had to go get this hog on Thursday because we were going to take it up to LC. The guy's name was LC Waltz. We're going to take it up to his place to prepare it for the pig roast. We're going to cook it overnight on slow pit. Actually, I think we started the cooking the next morning, but we had to prepare it the night before and let it cure and so forth. Okay. So we go out to this farm, and we get this pig, and it wasn't really that large of a hog, about maybe that big. So we get this hog, and I had an old 1972 pickup truck. So we take this hog, and this is about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock maybe. We strapped him in the front seat of the pickup truck. We couldn't leave him in the bed, he'd jump out. So we strapped him in between the two of us. This next part wasn't our fault. We'd been drinking beer ever since we left Randolph on the way into out the country to get the hog. In those days, in Texas, you could drink and drive and drink beer as long as you weren't drunk. Well, that made sense to me. Okay. So we're driving back through Universal City on the way to the hill country, to LC's place, and we thought, you want to stop and get something to eat? Yeah. So we pulled into McDonald's, the drive-thru, ordered a couple cheeseburgers, some fries, and a couple of ears of corn. Now we've got this hog strapped in the seat between the two of us. So this hog's all tied in between the two of us, and we drive through the drive-in, and we drive through the pay window. We drive up to the food window, and this little gal just about crap when she looks out the window. And she sees she's got the burgers and the ears of corn. The corn for our guest here. And she just about lost it. And so anyway, we take off out of there and head north up to the hill country, or west. Get out there and, kept drinking beer. So anyway, finally it came time to prepare the hog. And so we shot it. And then took and cleaned it and hung it up for it to cure overnight. Okay, things are going really well. So the next morning, Mikey and I head up there and get the hog put on the spit, get a nice fire going, and began slow roasting it. And it cooked throughout the day. And of course, watching a hog cook is kind of boring. So what do? Drink more beer. So we're sitting there drinking beer, turning the hog, probably telling stories, and guests show up about 4:30, 5 o'clock. They begin to show up, take the hog off the spit, and it really was great. It really tasted good. So when it came time, we started cutting them up, and we took a knife and we cut this one part, best described under the tail. So we cut that part out, and we took that and set it on a cutting board and just chopped it up real fine. Well, when Numbnuts came through the line, guess what part of the hog he got? He got the south end of a northbound hog. Just put it up there, put it on his plate, and sent him on his way. He later came up and said, "That's the best pork I've ever had in my life." And I thought, that kind of makes sense. At any rate, that was my story with my going away party when I left Randolph to go to Australia. One other note. The guy that took Jerry Hodson's place was a challenge. I had met him, and then he came in and became our boss about 6 weeks before I left. And he was I call him a reg reader. He didn't have a very effervescent personality, but boy, did he know how to read regs. So he came up to Mike and I, and he said, "Did you fellas take leave to prepare for the going away party?" We said, "No, sir." He said, I put the leave in for it. He knew we hadn't anyway, so he put the leave in for us and made us each take a day of leave to prepare for my going away party. Okay, if I had plenty, it wasn't a big deal, but it just the very fact that he wanted to let us know that we should have taken leave. Oh well. That being said, this is Bobo, Bass Gear.